Hello and welcome in, everybody. I'm Andromeda Astria, and today we are going to be talking about how to get started as a VTuber. So, this can be a very daunting process. There is so much out there, and there's so many options. And how do you even make those decisions? And can you even afford to do it? So, let's go ahead and get into some of the main questions you might be asking yourself or the internet once you decide to make the cool journey into becoming a VTuber. So, the first thing we're going to look at is the model. There's a couple of things people usually get stuck on with this. Number one is models are really expensive, right? And the second one is, how do you design it? I'm not sure what my persona is. So we're going to go over both of those. Let's go ahead and get started with models are super expensive, right? Well, yes and no. If you are going for a really high-end, customized, special-made model, yes, those are very expensive, and they could cost you as much as $10,000+. You can get cheaper ones. I've seen things from $500. They're a little less customizable, but they're great still. But even at that price tag, this is going to be out of many people's price range. So, what do we do? Well, I would highly recommend, no matter what your budget is, don't start by buying a really expensive model. There are a ton of cheap and free ways to test out if you even like VTubing. So I would suggest, if you like 3D, go ahead and get started with VRoid Studios. It is 100% free, and there's a lot of options that you can do to design your model. The model I'm using right now is a VRoid Studios model. I absolutely love it. Someday I might upgrade, but I don't really feel a need for that. Look how cute she is. I absolutely love her. So VRoid Studios is a great first and free option for anyone who likes the 3D idea and the 3D visuals. Now, if you don't like 3D and you really want live 2D, it's going to get a little more complicated. But you can occasionally find free or more often very, very cheap mass-produced 2D models on places like Etsy or Booth or various other locations. Those are the two I'd check out. Now, the thing with those is you will not have exclusive rights to those, and oftentimes you will not be able to do any sort of merch with them. You need to be very, very careful and read all the legal pieces and all of the terms of use if you're going to go ahead and buy a model that you are not creating yourself. The next one is, if you're artistically inclined, then you can go ahead and make yourself a model. You can make yourself a 2D model, you can make yourself a 3D model, anything is up for grabs. There are hundreds of amazing tutorials out there on how to make each different type of model. And this is really going to be the best option for anybody. If you have the time and the skill to do it, make yourself a model, because then you can make exactly what you want and you can change it whenever you want, and you hold all the rights and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But the number of people who are going to be able to do that is much smaller than the number of people who want to make VTubing something that works for them. So this is why we've got a bunch of different options depending on your artistic level and the extra free time you have, because making a model does take a decent amount of time. Now, the last thing I have on here is a PNG. Now, while technically a PNG tuber is not a VTuber, it really is, and I don't think there needs to be that much of a distinction between the two. It's really just a different type of model. PNGs can be cheaper than live 2D and 3D models, so it's a great option if you want to have something a little more customized to you, but you don't have the budget for a big model. So next we have, I'm not sure what my persona is. This one can be very daunting, and this is definitely where a lot of people are going to get held back with VTubing, because it really does seem like it is the most important piece. You want to come up with something that is a really good brand, something you're going to be able to go really far with, something that feels like it's you. And yes, all of those are very important. But the thing that's more important is that you can rebrand. If you decide that the VTuber persona you made doesn't quite vibe with you, isn't really doing what you want, you can absolutely 100% change it. You can change it at any time. But especially if you are not spending thousands of dollars on a model to start with, you can use a free model and decide if it's what you want. And then if it's not, you can change it and you're not out any cash and you can feel much more free to find that specific niche that works for you. So my advice is definitely remodel, figure out what you like. You don't have to worry quite so much about coming out with that perfect persona right off the bat. But how do we come up with personas? We're going to talk a little bit about that right now. One of the things you can do to figure out both your name and your persona is to think about things you like. So, if you go and look at a bunch of VTubers, you'll see all sorts of types. You've got plenty of like vampire VTubers. I've seen spider VTubers. I've seen food based VTubers, candy VTubers, cake VTubers, lemons. I've seen animal ones. We've got frogs and turtles, tons of foxes and cats. I don't think I've seen a dolphin yet. I'm sure there's one out there though. But any sort of animal can be a VTuber. You can work through naming yourself. There's a lot of great places you can go and look for a name. One of my favorites that I use in character creation is Behind the Name. They've got a good randomization and also tons of really great search tools. So you can look for things like if you're looking for a royal sounding name, they've got a search tool for that, or mythological based names, names that have to do with a specific type of weather. You've got like rain based, you've got earthy names. They've got all sorts of categories. So it's an amazing place to start if you don't know where to start with naming. And you can go ahead and figure out a persona off the names, or if you need to find a name for the persona, also a great way to do it. Another thing would be to look at anything that maybe isn't your favorite, but is really important to you. Was there a specific life event that you've had happen that is really important to you and you'd like to work this into your persona? Or even like make your persona work around it? Anything in your life can become that persona. Now, if you don't know what kind of design you're looking at, I would suggest pulling up these doll design websites. There's a few of them. You can just look up doll design and you'll come across a couple of them. And they kind of work like the old paper dolls, where you have a limited number of options. You can try on different clothes, you can change the eye color, but you don't have unlimited eye colors. You can change the hair color, but you don't have unlimited hair colors. You're going to be choosing between like 5 to 15 different options in all of these. And bringing in those options is really going to help you figure out what you do and don't like for when you go to actually design your VTuber in either VRoid or wherever else you're doing it. So I highly suggest taking a look at these doll design websites and just kind of ruling some stuff out and figuring out what pieces you actually really like, because it's going to save you so much headache later on. Now, the last piece, and this is going to be very important with your persona, but this is more for your final persona. However, it can help you come up with an idea in the beginning. It's going to be, what do you want to do as a VTuber? Do you want to be solely an ASMR VTuber? Do you want to be a gaming VTuber? Do you want to make instructional videos? Do you want to be a news VTuber? Anything that is content creation, you can be a VTuber and do that. So what thing is it that you're thinking you're going to want to do, and can you turn that into your persona? You want to do cooking videos? In that case, maybe you want to be some sort of food-based VTuber. Maybe this is where you want to be like an apple VTuber. Or maybe you want to be some sort of legendarily hungry creature, something that just wants to eat everything. You want to try all sorts of weird stuff and it doesn't matter if it seems edible? Do you want to be like a goat or a raccoon VTuber that just eats everything? any of these things can turn into your persona. So it's fun to go through all of them, but I would say don't take too much time worrying about finding the perfect one because when you're first starting out, you have plenty of time to adjust this and see what you like to do because you might have an idea in your head of what you think you're gonna like. And then when you go to do it, it doesn't quite become what you like. So if you've spent months or years trying to figure out the perfect persona and then you go into doing it and it doesn't quite feel right, it's gonna be harder to change than if you just pick something that might kind of work and try it out. So I say find something that you're okay with, create your model, and try it out. And then you can adjust later on. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. All right, so in our next section, we're going to be looking at the other stuff. But isn't there a lot of other stuff I need to stream? What about emotes, backgrounds, and promo art? When you look at VTubers, you often see them having all these really adorable emotes that they use in their streams and all over the place. You'll see them having these cool backgrounds. You'll see them constantly posting promo art. And while it might be very tempting to go ahead and get all that stuff before you even start, you don't need any of it. Having those is not going to make a difference between people watching you and not watching you. It's just a fun little bit of icing on the top, and no one is going to not watch you because you don't have any of these, and it is a great place to save money when you're just starting out. So I say don't bother getting any of those right off the bat. Wait until you have the funds for it, wait until you're sure you love VTubing, and then go ahead and get those. Well, surely I need special tech. Yes and no. You're going to need some tech, but you're not going to need anything too out of the ordinary or too special. Assuming you have a computer, you have most of what you need right there. So we see on the list a computer. Now you're going to need a camera that can do motion capture, but most computers do have something that can handle that built in. So whatever your computer's built-in camera is will be fine for starting out. You'll need something better later on, but for starting, your computer's built-in camera should be just fine. The one that you may need to put a little money into is going to be a decent microphone because as VTubers, our voice is the piece that people get to fall in love with and see, essentially. You do want to make sure that your voice is being captured well. Now, this does not mean you need to go out and buy a multi-$1,000 microphone or even a multi-$100 microphone. You can get a decent microphone for under $100 at places like Best Buy, things like that. Very easy to find, very decent, and will work for starting. You're just going to have to spend a little more time messing with the settings in OBS or whatever software that you're using. So to start with, you really only need something that'll do motion capture, a computer that can run the streaming software, and a microphone that is good enough but doesn't have to be great. As for the tech you're going to need later, capture cards are great, and if you're going to be playing something on a Switch or a PlayStation or an Xbox or any external gaming device, you will want a capture card. Now, capture cards do not need to be extremely expensive. You can get decent ones for well under $100, and it will be just fine. Now, I would suggest, unless you are 100% determined to play those games, I would suggest you find something that you can play on your computer or on a mobile device to start with, just to make sure you really like doing this before you put the money in. But a capture card is not the biggest investment, so it isn't a bad one to go into fairly early on if you know you want to be playing those games and streaming those games. Now, I have iPhone on here because the iPhone's camera is industry standard for motion tracking. So eventually, if you get into VTubing and you really love it, you will want to have an iPhone. Now, it does not have to be the latest version. It does not have to be the phone that you're using. It doesn't have to be brand new. You can find a refurbished iPhone that has the motion tracking on it and just use that. Should be just fine. It is going to be at least a few $100s though. So this is definitely a further down the line if you don't already have one. If you already have one, awesome. You've got the best motion tracking tech there is, and go ahead and use it. The next piece you'll see a lot of people using is a Stream Deck. Now, this is not a necessity until you are way further down the line and you have tons of toggles and things you need to deal with. To start with, you absolutely do not need one, but if you find that it's something that you're starting to want as you're streaming, you can pop it into things to save up for, things to get later. Now, another thing that you are going to want to get later, if you are starting with one of those lower end mics, you're going to want to make sure that you can upgrade your mic. I'd say it's going to be one of the earlier things you do as soon as it's possible for you to upgrade. Find the mic that works best with your voice. I'm not going to recommend any specific ones here because unfortunately, mics are really individual to each person's voice. Different mics pick up different ranges. You can find all sorts of amazing videos on this. Different mics that are better for higher voices, different mics that are better for lower voices, and you can find one that is going to match you really, really well. Go ahead and move on to our last thing. Okay, so for the last thing, just get started. I have seen tons of VTubers who've been pre-debut forever. I've had friends who got into VTubing and spent a ton of money on models and everything. And these people debut, they don't get that many views right off the bat. They don't grow their audience as fast as they'd like, despite having the highest end models, the highest end everything. And they eventually peter out, and most of them don't last a year. The problem with this is that people think that to be a successful VTuber, you have to have the best tech, the best model, all of that, and they forget about the piece that is the most important. Most important piece to all of this is you as a content creator. It actually does not matter what your model looks like. You can have a cardboard box model, and if you're making amazing content, people will love you and people will watch you. The model is a fun little extra piece and a really creative thing that we have for ourselves to express ourselves, but it is not what is going to make you someone people want to watch. Make sure that you know how to make good content. Make sure that you enjoy the work it takes to make that good content. And that you understand how many hours outside of streaming or videos people put into making this, that it's something that you can do and that you like to do well before you put in a bunch of money into this. Because this way you can be absolutely sure that this is something you love doing and that you want to keep doing. So I'm hoping everyone who's watching this is going to go ahead and just get started. You guys can get everything in this video done in a weekend, no problem. You could be streaming in a couple of days here and starting to build your communities. So go ahead and drop a little comment if you're going to start streaming, and I'll come check you guys out when I've got the time. I'm so excited to see what you guys come up with. Good luck, and I'll see you all next time.